Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where I am returning to the repaint well one more time, and probably several more times after this, because I have more repaints. But today, taking a look at Takara Legends Blurr, the undeniably superior paint job for Titan's Return Blurr. Now, I don't think this is a bad figure regardless of any version you get. I mean, this is like now the third version of this mold that I have, but it's just that the paint scheme, the color scheme of Titan's Return Blurr was terrible. Maybe I'm being unfair, but it was a really dull blue. There wasn't a lot of differences between the colors to separate things out. Virtually everything on him was some shade of blue, and it was just kind of meh. This guy, Legends Blurr, yeah, he's covered in blue, but the blues are much different in shade. This looks so great, and yeah, it's mostly blue right off the bat here, but like, you've got a much lighter blue and then a much darker blue, and it contrasts so much better than the muddled mess that was Titan's Return Blurr. Functionally, it's the same exact figure. Like, the molding is all exactly the same. It's just the paint job that's different, but the paint job makes a huge difference. And I know this is meant to homage G1 Blurr. I don't have a G1 Blurr on hand, and I don't really care about the G1 toy enough to, get one. But I know it's got a similar kind of vibe to it, mostly like the sloped nose and the scoop thingy on the back. But yeah, this is cool. I mean, I like this figure a lot in all of the different molds that I have it in, but this looks great. This kind of looks like this is what it was meant to be, which it totally was, so that stands to reason. But yeah, all across the board, like there's not a ton of paint that's visible in the vehicle mode, but what's there makes a huge difference. Like, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, basically like 5 or 6, I guess if you want to count that, bits on the that are immediately visible in vehicle mode that are painted. And then you've got some extra splashes of color for those hinges there, but it's in places that it helps to really break up this light blue. And it's, again, like I said, much darker, so it contrasts with that much lighter blue so much better. I vastly prefer this vehicle mode over the one that we originally got here in the States. It was just not great. And as you can see, there's lots of molding throughout, which we'll see a lot more of in robot mode, I do believe. And in here, we've got our Headmaster, Titan Master. I don't know what they're calling them in the Legends line, but before we look at him, you can see the inside here is done up in white now instead of standard plastic blue. And I like this too, because that white does pop against the rest of the blue when you've got it actually open, like when you got the hatch open or whatever you want to call it. But on top of that, it's a nice shade that actually shows off all of the really great detailing that's inside there. So that is pretty cool. But moving on to I'm just going to call him a Headmaster, because this is not Titan's Return, so we'll just go with that. He's, a simple little robot person. Very basic, but it's painted nicely. There's a lot of little bits painted in the head there. I really like that they managed to paint the visor just like a lighter blue that actually, like that's a small bit to paint there. That is a very small thing to paint. But they also got like the top of his head, and then you got a little bit in the shins there, and then the torso is just a different color, which is great because it separates all that out. And they also painted the sides of the arms, which are more for when he's in when he's in his head mode, but you get little bits of it kind of poking through when you look at him from the side, so it does, or when you look at him from the front, so it does make those arms look like they're a little bit more detailed, paint-wise. Not too shabby. Definitely better than what we got. I mean, they did, to Hasbro's credit, they did paint Titan's Return Blurr's Titan Master, unlike a lot of the other Titan Masters that they did later, but this one definitely looks better. Anyway, let's move him back so that we can do our size comparisons. Here he is with our new Standard Deluxe, and he looks smaller in terms of bulk, but I think the overall size is about the same. Like, they're roughly the same length, roughly the same height. Blurr is just narrower and tapers in places. And because, of course, I had to, here he is with the other versions of this mold that I have. Let me raise this up a bit so you can actually... There we go. So you can see them a little bit better as they compare to one another. We've got Blurr and then Brainstorm and Titan's Return RC. And it's funny how these are like they're all the same mold, and you can definitely see echoes of that throughout, but they do all kind of wear it respectably differently, I think, in terms of like the molding and the color schemes here. Again, like, you can see that they're derived from the same skeleton, but they also definitely come off as completely different characters, or completely different vehicles in this case. And here he is. Let me bring this back down here real quick. Here's Blurr with the duck tank. All right, that is going to do it for our size comparisons. So let's just get right down to that transformation. It's been so long since I did the video on Titan's Return Blurr. I don't remember if I actually was showing transformations at that point or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to go through it anyway because it'll be quick. And there we have Legends Blurr in his robot mode, and this, even more than the vehicle mode, shows off just how much this color scheme blows the Titan's Return version out of the water. This looks so great! And I mean, again, the base figure is a very good figure. This is the third version of this mold that I have, and it does not bother me at all. I don't care about doing 3 transformations of this thing back to back. It's totally fine. But the color scheme on Titan's Return Blurr was just so bland, and this livens it up so much. It looks so much more vibrant. Contrasting blues are great, and they're interspersed in really nice ways. But then you've also got the addition of more white in the legs, the hands, and the face. And the pattern is nice too. I, again, don't have the G1 original to compare it to, but this feels right. And again, it just looks great. Like, the figure is I keep saying this, but the figure is a very solid figure on its own. It's just that color scheme was so bad, but this color scheme is so much better. I mean, it's all the exact same detailing as Titan's Return Blurr. It's just broken up so much nicer with the white and the light blue and the dark blue, and that kind of change up between the dark blue and the light blue. They did the Autobot logo on a very nice bright white section of the, I guess, midriff, which just makes it pop super hard through that window there. And I also kind of like how, because the shading in the blue of the back of the seat and the edge of the frame here is the same shade and the plastic is translucent, it almost looks like the window, it almost looks like the patterning comes up and goes around the logo there, but this is actually the back of the chair. Let's pull this up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. Like, those little angly bits are from the back of the chair, but when you fold this down, it looks like this is all one big design there, and that's cool. I like that. Granted, the completely translucent plastic does make it look like he's got this weirdly hollow chest, but doesn't really bother me. I think it still works great. And then some nice molding on the arms. Got more paint for the shoulders for these boosters that are not the actual boosters, because the actual boosters are down here, but it looks so good. And then that head is, again, the exact same head as Titan's Return Blurr, but it's painted so much better here. The blue on the arms are, just make the head seem like it goes out further and makes it seem less like there's just face and then plastic. It's just nicely done. Nicely blended in with everything else. That little bit of yellow on the head crest there, or not head crest, the forehead, is very much like the little bit of yellow for the thingy on the back of the vehicle mode. I kind of feel like this little bit popping up off his head could have done with a little splash of paint, but that is hardly a big deal. This guy just looks so good. This color scheme works so much better, and I know I've said that. I know everybody says that because it's, science, but it really does look so much better, and I'm glad I finally got this version of the figure, because I always was I really like this mold, and I kind of missed having Blurr in my lineup, but I just don't like Titans Return Blurr with that color scheme. But this is so much better. I've kind of been coveting this guy every time he's popped up in videos from like TJ Omega and Thu and stuff. I see him and it's just like, he looks so good. That blue, the different shades of blue, the whites, they all look so good. And now I've got one of my own, and yes, they are that good. Size-wise, he's, about typical deluxe height, but he's far less bulky, but I think that's to his benefit. Because, he's Blurr. He's supposed to be lithe and speedy and whatnot. I know it's uncharacteristic of me to talk about that kind of stuff, because I generally don't talk about character stuff, and I don't really know anything about Blurr other than he was voiced by the Micro Machines guy in the movie, but I don't know, this just works. And bringing in the mold siblings that I have, you can see, again, they are totally the same figure, they're the same skeleton, but the slight remolding done in a few places, like Brainstorm's upper arms, I mean, the heads are given, but like, it's Brainstorm's upper arms, like the shoulders and all that, and RC's shoulders as well, that are the primary differences in terms of like molding in robot mode. When you look at them from this angle, there's a lot of similarities in the molding, but because of the colors and the way those colors are distributed, and also the heads, but like, we can ignore the heads because those pop off anyway. Like, just looking at the colors as a whole and how they're distributed, they all look like very distinct figures, even though they are functionally the same figure. And truth be told, if I could get my hands on a Nautica for not an absurd amount of money, I would probably do that, because I really like this mold, and every single time it comes across as a very unique character. But again, Titans Return Blurr's color scheme is really disappointing, so I'm going to be avoiding that one. And just to finish things off, so I'm not ranting and raving about the differences in color schemes across the same mold all the time, here he is with Duck Tank. And that is gonna do it for Legends Blurr. Not surprising in the least in terms of just being an actual toy. This is now technically the 4th time I've had this mold, because I did have Titans Return Blurr, which is the exact same thing, but I sold him off because color scheme was so disappointing. But, it's 4th time I've had this, and it's still a great figure. It's just this color scheme works so much better. It's the entire theme. You could make a drinking game out of it. Don't make a drinking game out of it, but you could. But that is the running theme. This color scheme is fantastic. But what do you all think of Takara Legends Blurr? I mean, it might be presumptuous of me to say, but I'm pretty sure there isn't a single person on the planet who truly believes that this color scheme and patterning and all that is somehow worse than what we got with Titans Return Blurr. I could totally understand preferring Titans Return Blurr over this guy, because Titans Return Blurr is way more affordable, but I feel like if you're not factoring in price and accessibility, just looking at them side by side, I feel like it's a no-brainer that this is the superior paint scheme. But that aside, what do you all think in terms of, say, I don't know, G1 accuracy? Because I, again, don't have the comparison to make myself. And how are you all feeling in terms of mold fatigue? Not mold fatigue in terms of the mold itself fatiguing and parts getting looser and so on and so forth, but like you personally getting tired of seeing the same mold over and over again. Granted, they're not using this anymore because Titans Return is done, but you know what I mean. As for me, this is obviously the kind of mold that I do not mind owning multiple times, but I also know there are people who have an aversion to that, or there are certain molds that you just don't care one way or another, one is good enough. But whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And while you're at it, also feel free to like, subscribe, or if you're feeling generous, you could buy me a coffee. Any of those things would make me a happy Rob, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.